These days, the premier rugby league competition here in Australia is the NRL, short for the National Rugby League, and their major sponsor is Telstra and has been for over 20 years now. But going back in time to the late 1980s, it was then known as the NSWRL, New South Wales Rugby League, and their major sponsor was Winfield. This was back when tobacco companies sponsored most of the major sporting leagues in Australia, generally brands like Winfield or Benson and Hedges, but what they wanted to do with the Winfield Cup is they had started expanding outside of Sydney to regional areas like Wollongong or Newcastle, Canberra, even interstate to Brisbane. But they wanted more than that. They wanted to also expand to traditional Aussie rule states where Aussie rules had always been far and away the number one code. They wanted to attract greater viewing audiences, and that in turn would drive more revenue into the game and would help to fund the game at a grassroots level and to make the whole game as a whole bigger. So it was around that time that they came up with what proved to be a marketing masterstroke. They got one Tina Turner on board, and at the time Tina was one of the most instantly recognisable musical artists in the world. There's nobody like Tina these days. I mean, if we're thinking back then, probably the closest person to her now, the closest artist to her would be somebody like Beyonce. That's probably the closest comparison I can draw. But Tina had a whole stack of hits through the 70s and the 80s. And the first year they got her on board, they got her to do a rendition of her song, What You Get Is What You See. And that lasted for a year. But it was what came next that really cemented her and the campaign as the unofficial anthem of the Winfield Cup. What they did the following year was they took her song Simply the Best and they made an advert out of that, and yeah, like I said, that became the game's anthem for the next 5 or 6 years. And I've included a link to that ad down below so you can check it out if you've never seen the ad for yourself, so you get a better idea of what I'm talking about. Obviously, correlation doesn't always equal causation, but that ad campaign coincided with what at the time was the most successful period in the code's history. TV figures went through the roof, crowds were up, the game expanded to new areas, huge growth period for the game that was only really, in the end, blighted by the whole Super League war of the mid-90s. But that's another story. What I wanted to talk more about today is why that advertising campaign was so successful and what makes a successful advertising campaign. I don't know what your thoughts are when you watch the ad, but for me, there's a couple of things that really stand out. The first one is that the use of a lot of blue lighting. It has this very moody feel to it, despite the fact that rugby league, especially back in those days, was typically played on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon. There's a lot of a moody, sort of darker feeling to the footage of the players training or when Tina's dancing about. There's that moody sort of blue light to things. There's also a more glamorous feel to the ad. I mean, rugby league has traditionally been a working class game, but notice at the start when the plane lands, the 747 lands, and then Tina gets out of the limo and she's immediately mobbed by all the press and the cameras and stuff. Or when she appears at that black tie event with the players and she's mingling with them and laughing, and then she's up on the dance floor busting a few moves. Like, there's this real star factor to the whole ad, isn't there, that centers around Tina. But it's also Tina herself. I mean, she was very much she has that energy to her, that sex energy to her. She's been referred to as a sexy grandmother, and she was. There's that real energy to her. For lack of a better word, it's a sexy ad. And there's a lot of footage, obviously, of players training and they're half naked and they're sweating. And again, that appeals more to the female audience. As the saying goes, sex sells. Now, these days, Winfield or any tobacco company hasn't sponsored sport in Australia for over a quarter of a century as mandated by law. And, I mean, yeah, Tina Turner's obviously no longer singing songs for the NRL, but you see this same principle play out, especially in ads for things like deodorant or aftershave for men. You know, so dab on this fancy aftershave or spray this deodorant under your armpits and women will flock to you. You will become a sex symbol and you'll be irresistible to women. You see the flip side of this with ads for, say, women's hair care products like shampoo or conditioner. You know, it shows a woman, an attractive woman, standing under a shower and she's washing her hair with the sponsor's product. And then she takes to the streets and she literally turns heads. People can't take their eyes off her. She stops traffic. Again, they want you to attach these strong emotions to what they're selling. Because if you try to sell your product or your service, your business as a whole, if you just try to sell it on the facts alone, people are going to tune out. People are going to be bored by that. You've got to make them feel something. When you can tap into people's emotions, that is the strongest call of action known to man. Think about how someone like Coca-Cola or Pepsi or McDonald's, think about their advertising campaigns. It's not just about the product itself. It rarely focuses that much on the product at all. Same goes for expensive perfumes or aftershaves. It has very little to do with how good the product smells or the quality of the food or the beverage. It's about all the other things attached to it that they want you to subconsciously attach to consuming their product. It's about good times, it's about family, it's about togetherness, it's about excitement, it's about all these positive emotions that they want you to associate with their product or their service. Of course, you see the negatives of this, like all these ads about drink driving or speeding or not wearing your seatbelt, and they just expand on these worst case scenarios, and they want you to associate the most negative emotions with not doing the right thing. And same as insurance companies, they always play on the on the fear of, well, this is the worst that could happen, and how much would you hate not to be covered by our insurance? So you see this play out both ways, but it's the same thing. It's about getting you to feel something, feel a particular emotion, and to have a particular response in connection with their brand. Even perhaps a more polarizing example is those ads that you see for closing down sales at some warehouse. Everything must go 50% off this weekend only, and there's some guy talking in this really loud voice and like he's hyper excited, and it's so over the top. And maybe you keep that ad on, or maybe you change a channel or mute the volume. But even so, it's still a more successful advertising campaign because they've got you to make a decision to either watch the ad and pay attention, to switch off, change the channel, or mute the volume. And it's still more effective than these ads that you forget like that. These ads that just fade into the background. Now, I wanted to talk about this today because if you can get your audience to feel something, that is the strongest call of action that there is. And when you think about how you're promoting your business, when you think about your marketing message, maybe the reason that you're not having the success that you'd like to see with that is because you're boring your audience. You're not giving them enough to make you memorable. They're not attaching certain emotions with the product that you're selling or the service that you're selling. If you can get your audience to associate your brand with particular values and particular emotions in your marketing messaging, that makes a huge difference to the way people respond to it. So yeah, I wanted to leave you with that today, and if that's something that you want to talk a bit more about when it comes to your business, I'm happy to chat with you about that. You can reach me on the links below and organise a time to talk, and we can go into a bit more detail about your business and about what you're doing with your marketing and what areas of opportunity you might be walking right past. What are these little things that we could change that would make people have a stronger reaction to your brand? What emotions do you want people to associate with your brand? So if that interests you, just click the links below and let's get in contact and let's have a conversation about that. Otherwise, share this video with anybody that you think it might help. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't had the amazing foresight to do that yet, so you don't miss videos like this in the future. Otherwise, I hope to talk to you soon on a call if you want help with this, if you want help taking your marketing to the next level. Otherwise, I'll be doing a few more videos in the days to come. I was out of action for a little bit, had a bit of a frog in the old throat, but we're all better now. So stay tuned, guys, and I'll talk to you again soon. Catch you later.